Welcome back to CSE Tech Talk. I'm Garrett Helms.
And I'm Preston Corless.
And today we have a very special guest with us, Brother Willden. How are you doing, man?
Doing great. Willden, I grew up in Pocatello, Blackfoot area. I'm a pianist, so I've been taking piano lessons actually from Stephen Thomas on campus here. We're playing a really difficult song. It's called Concerto No. 3, so it's pretty fun. Cool. I have been a software engineer probably about 11 or 12 years. My very first job on campus, I got lucky and just got a job irrelevant to software development or anything like that. And I took one software development class and got me super interested in software development. And it was in Java, so I started automating parts of my job. My boss really liked it, so she moved my position to like the student automator. Anyways, her boss saw that, and he kind of was the one who triggered my excitement in the tech field, and that's what kind of kicked me off. Anyways, it's pretty fun. So, anyways, that's a little bit about me.
Cool. So how long then have you been in the tech field, would you say?
Yeah, so as a student, I'd say probably about 2012 is when I started. And then after graduation, I actually worked on campus as a software engineer and a data analyst for about 4 years. And then worked at a startup for about close to another 3. Mm-hmm. And then latest I was at a financial technology company called Clearwater Analytics. So leading their AI software development teams. So,
holy cow. So you started off in 2012, right? So you said that was Java you first got in with?
Yeah, started doing Java and JavaScript both.
Okay, so that was back in the jQuery days, right?
Oh yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
So did you make any big sites that used frameworks like jQuery, or what kind of work did you do there?
Yeah, that's a good question. Actually, I really wanted to figure out how jQuery works, so I reverse engineered it and tried to build my own jQuery. Because I was really interested. I'm like, how do they do these prototype functions, and do they use object orientedness with this, and do they use classes? And so I started building my own, following the same patterns.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I remember when I first got into like JavaScript, it was I didn't want to use jQuery and everything, but I liked some of its patterns, and so I just made some of my own little functions that worked like jQuery. But yeah. That's awesome. That's cool.
Yeah.
And so what kinds of things did you build then with web technology?
Yeah, so I did a lot of web apps. So at the time, we were reviewing a lot of online courses, and online courses would always have broken links in it. So students would click a link and it would go nowhere. So I made a tool with, this one was with Java, that actually crawled every single online course. I think there were like 320 at the time. And then every section of that. And I basically just made a link checker. So every single link I'd ping. If it returned a 200 or 300-ish response, then I would say it's a successful, and then I would create a report. Anyways, that's kind of that was like one of the first bigger projects I played around with.
Wow, that's cool. So Java on the back end and then JavaScript on the front end. Basically. Yep. Awesome, cool stuff.
Yeah, no, it's pretty fun. And then, so when I moved to Stu Kent, we were building simulation software. And anyways, it was a little bit awkward at first because it's kind of like, even though it was a 5-year-old company at the time, it felt like the software was like 20 years old.
Oh, jeez. Wait, was Stu Kent, so that's not the startup you were talking about, though,
yeah.
right? Oh,
yep,
that
is.
Okay,
yep.
Okay. And so Stu Kent, I mean, I've heard of it now, right?
Yeah.
What exactly is it that they do there?
Yeah, so if you're into marketing or any of the business degrees, we built software at the time to simulate ad traffic or like keyword traffic. So if you put in let's say a keyword of like, BYU, Idaho, it would essentially simulate ad traffic and revenue and clicks and percentages and start simulating that data. So then as a marketer, you'd be able to make decisions, change your content, and then see how that adjusts your cost per click or how many clicks. So, and then from there, we kind of started doing a little bit more stuff. Anyways, we got a new CTO at the time. His name was Justin. And we ended up, I was able to like interview him too, and it was pretty fun. But what he did is he came on and like kind of blew up the concept of what we were building. We were building like a specific use case, and then do it again. Build another piece of software for a specific use case. But anyways, he came in and said, all right, let's make this more dynamic. Let's make it so that anybody could build a simulation. So what I did is he had this idea, and I'm like, I love building prototypes. As a side note, prototypes, if you get good at prototypes, that will sell ideas faster than just PowerPoints, in my opinion.
Oh, I bet.
100%.
I mean, when you have a product that's actually usable, they see its use case in work. I mean,
and they could click it and actually watch stuff happen.
Yeah, for sure.
Even though it doesn't scale. Anyways, so over the weekend, I put in probably 20 hours and built this prototype of this super dynamic simulation builder software and renderer. Anyways, showed my boss, and he was like, oh, that's cool. Anyways, it didn't actually sell it to him. So I kept building on the side for probably a month.
Wow.
To the point where actually, as a company, the CEO looked at it and said, all right, we're shifting our business to that.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
And then all of a sudden, they now hired a bunch of product owners to start building simulations. And and then we had about 16 software engineers at the time. And we got to rally those 16 engineers, and I got to be manager over them and build out this software to be a lot deeper.
Wow. Holy cow. So what was it? So again, this software was built to simulate clicks?
Yeah, for that,
traffic?
That was the one simulation. So we started building out social media marketing simulations, analytics, like data analytics simulations, and like personal finance simulations. So basically, the concept is you have content, you have a lot of interactiveness, and then you have some simulation aspect where it pumps data.
Okay.
And we had to figure out how to modularize every part of that.
Yeah, that's good. And so that was all Java code base, right?
So for that one, it was an Angular front end, and then we did .NET as a back end.
.NET, so you switched to C#.
And we use Azure, and then we actually use Azure Functions for serverless.
So was that C# in the back end on Azure side as well?
Yep.
Okay. So I haven't built any huge projects myself, but how well would you say it scaled up being an object-oriented approach? C# is an object-oriented language. Would you feel like it scaled nicely in that respect?
Oh yeah, honestly, the back end I thought scaled extremely nicely, especially being on serverless, because you could have 30,000 users hit it within a couple days.
Yeah.
And it would handle the load very nicely. But even on the data side for the object-orientedness, it was really nice because our data we stored in Mongo, but we were able to map it basically into C# objects, and it was just really clean relationship type of data. So I thought it was pretty natural.
That's cool. And so the serverless, is that kind of like a Lambda, AWS?
Yeah, AWS Lambda, Google Functions, I think. I can't remember what they call them actually.
Like that. No. Okay, cool. Because I know that a year or so ago, serverless was becoming a big thing. Was that when you guys were working on it? How long ago?
Yeah, that was 2018, I think.
Oh, okay.
Oh, wow.
Cool.
So 6 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was serverless kind of a new thing back then? How long back does it go?
If I remember, I first heard of it probably 2014.
Oh, geez.
Some companies were starting to move to it.
Okay, cool.
But I will be honest, there's a cost model where if you have traffic under a certain load, it absolutely makes sense. But once you get high scale traffic, it actually becomes way more expensive because now you pretty much pay per thousand or tens of thousands of requests.
And so a quick rundown of what serverless means, right? So that's when you have you're able to make a process that's lightweight but can be spawned multiple times and share system resources.
Yeah, essentially, basically, you don't have a dedicated virtual machine that you are babysitting.
Yeah.
So you just have code and a little bit of configuration, and when you deploy it out, in our case to Azure, it will basically spin up, handle the server aspect for you, And as more load comes, it will just spin up more and more. It will just automatically scale the load for you.
That feels a little bit like how Erlang works. Where I'm learning Erlang right now.
Oh yeah, I actually am not. I haven't done tons with Erlang.
I feel like it follows that kind of process where.
Oh yeah, cool.
That's really interesting. I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. So it's really fun. So we built that, and then after a while, it was like I needed that work-family balance.
Okay.
Because I think we were doing probably 60, maybe sometimes more hours a week. And
oh dang, that's a lot of work.
And with kids, it was like with
Dang.
young kids, you only have so many hours before they're in bed.
I know. Yeah, I bet.
So I decided to switch to Clearwater, and anyways.
That was a bigger organization. Right?
Yeah, that one I think had about 1,500 employees at the time.
Okay, cool.
Honestly, I kind of, at first I was like being a little bit shy, being there, but there was a point, like a few months into it, there was a point where I was like, being shy is honestly not going to do me any good. So I started becoming a lot more social. I started chatting with as many employees as I could. I continued this prototyping approach, and when AI started becoming big in early 2023, I actually did a quick prototype. Like overnight, I built this SQL creator, basically, where you would use a prompt. It would generate SQL code based off of our production schema.
No way.
And our databases were huge. It would have probably multiple terabytes, like across probably, I don't know, hundreds of tables, thousands of tables probably.
That's crazy.
So anyways, it would dynamically build these queries, query the data, and then I used high charts to show graphs on that.
Yeah.
And then at an all employee meeting, I got to demo that to the entire 1,500 people.
And they were like, whoa.
So everybody was blown away.
Yeah.
It was so cool.
That sounds awesome.
And it was pretty fun. So the CEO at the time was like, that's it. We're going to invest $20-30 million into this.
Dude, that must have felt good.
Yeah.
And
not because of me. Like there were probably 3 or 4 people like me that did demos. So it wasn't just me solely at all.
Oh, okay. He's just being humble here, guys. But because I remember I heard about this idea called like the cult of done, where you have an idea and you should only invest in that idea for a maximum of like 2 or 3 weeks before you just hand it off and whoever else wants to take it up, because I don't know about anyone else watching or whatever, but I've got a couple of projects that I've been working on for years, right?
I know.
And they just slow me down, they drag me down. And so like what you said about prototyping, I feel like sometimes I'm too afraid to do that and let things just be messy for a bit, right? And just kind of, as long as it works, just hack it together and it works, and you can. That'll at least make you get you and people around you feeling excited about what you're doing, right?
And honestly, like forever, I've had this concept of like I want to start a business. So like think of a perfect business idea, build software around it, quick prototype it, and then I realize it's a stupid business idea, and then it kind of dies. But I always step back and think, all right, what I learned during that quick prototyping period is insane. Like it made my knowledge rapidly increase.
Like anyone who's done hackathons can agree there too.
100%.
100% hackathons or any kind of coding competition or like game jams or whatever.
Even this 2-week, so like BYU-Idaho is doing a 2-week like coding mini project. For,
in the computing society.
In the computing society, like that type of thing is so perfect.
I'm really excited to see what students come up with for that. We're gonna be demoing them in 2 weeks, so. Yeah.
And honestly, I mentioned this over there too. Like if you're doing prototypes, honestly, explain it to your job interviewers.
Yeah.
Like just talk it up and about everything you learned and the challenges. It's like, like for example, it's like, I couldn't figure out how to get auth in a nice fluent way with my WordPress demo that I use. So I made a little demo using LLMs to write ads.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how can we do the auth piece so it's easy for plugin installers, but safe at the same time.
Yeah.
So it's like challenges like that, I think, are important to.
Yeah. I've got a question about the prototypes. So, what would you say the distinction would be? Let's say a student goes into an interview, they want to, explain their prototype. What would you say the distinction would be between showing off a personal project, because everybody's told, hey, do a personal project, have personal projects to show in interviews. What would you say kind of sets the prototype apart from just like a regular personal project?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So in my mind, they could be the same thing. Personal projects could be a longer version of a prototype.
Yeah.
In my mind, it's a similar category. But like so getting the job interview is a feat in itself.
True.
Like, especially when the market goes
sometimes.
weird.
Yeah.
But even during the interview, so I got to interview a lot of people, and it became extremely obvious within even a couple of minutes of who really wanted to learn and figure out new things, like build things, or able to be self-achievers. It's really obvious to see who did just the coursework and that's it. Maybe a project for the coursework or whatever. So anyways, in the interview, it really sets people apart because it's like shows a little bit of passion. It shows ownership, which I think is even more important. And it shows that tenacity and grit that you could take an idea and actually
Yeah. And especially as it pertains to personal projects and prototypes, people having things that they're able to demo, right?
Oh yeah, no, 100%.
Yeah.
So what was the first job that you got into? I think we talked about a lot of your earlier jobs. What did you say was your first one, like fresh out of college?
Yeah, no, I worked on campus actually just right after college in the course improvement department, where we analyzed data from all the online courses. We had a huge data warehouse at BYU, Idaho, so we got to query that and do some analysis. And anyways, I started doing a lot of like software work around that. I actually started around that time is when the word to vec algorithm kind of got introduced. I think a couple guys at Google like discovered or invented this new algorithm.
Yeah.
And
What algorithm again?
it's called word to vec.
What does that mean?
So I'll show you the use case and I'll explain what it is.
Okay.
So we basically took all these student comments from these evaluations. So we have thousands of these student comments. And with this algorithm, you're basically able to vectorize and graph where like words are. So the cool part is you can start doing math on like words.
Yeah.
So it's like queen plus king minus husband equals, and then it would spit out wife.
Wow. Okay. I hear that's a little bit like how LLMs work. So that's kind of like
It's like the
of
foundation,
that.
yeah.
Okay. That's
So without that, I don't think LLMs would have gone so far.
Really? That's cool. So you said that's when it came out. So were you using it back then, or?
So I was really starting to explore it, and I had an Intel Mac at the time, and those Intel Macs could only go so far with data processing. And anyways, so I was going down that route. I loved it. It was fun. But then I was chatting with the software engineering manager here on campus. I think you mentioned before that you tried to build your own programming language. So I also tried to build my own programming language. I called it Cobra Lang.
Let's go. I like that.
Which ironically, the owner of Cobra Lang emailed me and said I had to change my name. I'm like, come on, nobody uses your library.
You're like, oh yeah, you have to change your name. Yeah.
Anyway, so the manager, I was explaining this programming language I built, and he was really impressed and got me a job interview, and I got hired in there, and that's really what kind of kicked me off.
Cool. Well, what did Cobra Lang do? Was it a compiled or interpreted language?
So I was doing interpreted, so the JavaScript V8 engine that powers Chrome and Node. They had a couple really cool concepts. One of them was around memory allocation. Like they would allocate chunks of memory and just reuse parts of that over and over and over. And if they need another part, it'll allocate it.
Yeah.
And so I was trying.
Isn't that sandboxing? Memory sandboxing? Or no, is that something else?
I don't know actually.
Okay, sorry, keep going.
Anyways, so I tried an experiment where I was using malloc and just like allocating memory on the fly. And it was okay, but once I switched to this chunk approach, it sped it up probably like 18,000 times, or it was like insanely faster.
Wow.
It made me realize how expensive malloc is.
Yeah, because I've heard. Yeah, so malloc communicates with the kernel,
Yeah.
and the kernel's got to figure out. So you need this much space. Where do we have that sequentially, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And so like,
Especially if it's a fragmented
yeah, that's quite
Memory,
interesting
I
because
guess.
I've heard that like Golang is introducing what's called memory arenas or something like that, where you
Oh,
can
interesting.
do that as a part of the feature in Golang.
That's cool.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So I got to explore that. So I was trying to build that.
I think it's an experimental feature in Golang. But sorry, keep going.
So cool. No, it really is like the coolest concept.
Yeah.
Anyways, the other part of V8 that I thought was insanely cool is all their math operations actually, they compile it down to a specific assembly piece of code. Like in the actual C++.
Yeah.
You could see like the assembly code. So I was like, I wonder why they did that. So I had to figure out why the original authors did that. They found out the square root function basically in assembly is insanely faster than anything else in like C++ or whatever. Or maybe C++ even uses it.
Sorry, you seen that there was an opcode for a square root? Or
Yeah, to my knowledge, I don't know that much about
Sounds
it.
about
but-
right, like knowing Intel, right? So
Yeah.
the complex instructions that CPUs, right?
Yeah. So anyway, so I'm like, oh, that's interesting. So I tried to implement that, and then, anyways, I got to a point where I was like, all right, this is becoming bloated and it's really awful. Then I tried rewriting it, and then it kind of died from there.
But hey, it still got you the job, though.
It got me the job.
It's because of your passion and your commitment and how much you put into it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, in that sense, the project served its purpose, right?
Honestly,
It
100%.
doesn't have to be, doing exactly what the README says it does, you know. It gets you a job, that's what it did.
And then around that time, so I was never going to plan on doing a master's, but around that time, one of my neighbors actually pulled me aside, and he was like, Chase, I think you should do a master's. Like, who are you to tell me that? Anyways.
You say it was a neighbor?
Yeah, it was a neighbor.
Oh.
He, being LDS, he was an Elders Corps president.
Gotcha.
Okay.
But anyways, like the more I thought about it and talked about it with my wife, is like, we don't have kids right now. Let's just do it. Anyways, I put in the time, did the master's. Anyways, my job at Clearwater, like I was one of the hires, and one of the deciding factors was actually that degree. So that also served its purpose, like in getting there, and even becoming a faculty. Like you have to have a master's to become a faculty. So I mean, it like even served for that. So the concepts of just doing stuff, even though you might not understand why at the time, you could absolutely utilize that.
Cool.
Anyways, it's pretty fun.
That's awesome. Sorry, you go.
I was going to say, and I'm not going to lie, I always have side projects. I have probably 5 or 6 side projects, and I pick them up here and there.
Yeah, I think
All
we
of us
all
do.
do. Yeah, we all have at least
That's the way of the programmer.
It's the way it goes. Yeah.
Just live with it.
It's the way my CPU works as well, right?
Yeah,
It's task switching.
Just
That's-
boom, boom, boom,
that's-
boom,
That's
boom.
how I do
Get
it.
uninterested in that, go back and say, I made it actually further
Yeah,
than I thought.
exactly. Exactly. Going back to when you were talking about when you were put in charge of this team at your first job, that was Stu Kent, right?
Yeah.
How did it feel? So you probably transitioned from an engineer to a manager pretty quickly.
Yep.
What did that feel like to you, and what did you learn?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So management is different than just being an individual contributor.
Yeah.
So IC is kind of the short name for that. An individual contributor, you can have far less meetings.
Yeah.
You get to just code and do all that stuff. But once you become a manager, it's a little bit different, where now you have a flock of developers who have opinions and want to share the opinions all the time with you. And they talk about how they don't want to come into work today. And now you have to figure out how to work with that. And now you have to handle lazy employees. Or you might have to let someone go.
You can't just fire them, right? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, actually, the first time I was about to let someone go, like my boss pulled me aside. He's like, you have to let him go. Like, this is enough. He's been so lazy, not productive. Anyways, I was stressing out, and no joke, that day he put in his 2 weeks notice, and I was like,
Wow.
Good.
But no,
that
it
probably
was
a relief then, not having to.
But like,
let
there's
go.
aspects of management that was just so different. But honestly, I just loved the fact that I'm not just making my career successful, but but I'm making like 16 other people's careers successful too. I think that's like super fulfilling. And honestly, that's one of the reasons why I'm teaching is now I get to work with hundreds of students and make them successful. That's so rewarding in my mind. So I think it's honestly so cool.
Awesome.
I will be honest, management's not for everybody.
Right.
So
Cool. So what kinds of things are going on right now with you? You said you're working on this new advertising project thing.
yeah, I'm doing an advertising LLM. I'll just list all the projects I'm doing.
Go ahead.
I'm working on this ORM in Rust with a gentleman in Norway and
ORM, what's that
Florida. An ORM is basically using code to interface with databases.
Oh, okay.
So
I like that. Cool.
So we're basically trying to have Postgres, Oracle, MySQL, and SQLite and MariaDB basically integrated so that you could easily access it with Rust. Anyways,
So you mean like making making so that you can invoke like methods that perform SQL queries
Essentially,
instead of passing in like a string as a query.
yeah, exactly.
Okay. Yeah, I got it.
Yeah, no, so we're building that. I'm doing another side project that I'm doing. I have tons, I'm telling you. Doing like a machine learning data pipeline, like data gathering, trying to get it in a state where I can start doing ML on it.
Cool.
So have that. I have like a little side business I'm doing with a guy in Texas.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Cool.
I always have side projects.
Well, so you've been around, you said, hundreds of students as a professor. Seeing all of those students, what would you say would be the number one piece of advice you could give your students currently that could help them in their future careers?
Oh man, I would say honestly the number one is, I don't want to word this in a way where it sounds rude, but develop the skills to figure it out on your own, if that makes sense. Like if someone has to tell you to do something and then basically you're doing as I'm doing type of thing, like that's only going to get you so far in your career. But if you're a go-getter and you could reverse engineer, or you could solve problems yourself, or you could create new events, or if you could orchestrate or whatever, you can learn new technology. That's honestly a skill I think a lot of employers are going to be interested in. Self-driven, business-minded. Like my mind, software engineers also need to have in their mind is what I'm building actually important, or is it just really cool?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Something that I've told people before is like school shouldn't, or it doesn't have to, it shouldn't be the only place where you learn stuff. You should be someone who goes and learns things on your own. Look like Wikipedia or whatever, YouTube even if need be, where you learn something, right? Where you find something that you're interested in and you go ahead and learn it. Because there's so much you can do with just the internet these days, right?
And honestly, do something you're interested in. Like if you're interested in Pokemon cards, try to make an app to organize Pokemon players or whatever. I don't know. Or if you're a competitive swimmer, do something to track your personal records. Like build an app for that. Integrate it with Apple Watches so you could kind of get heartbeat thrown into that or something like that.
So it doesn't really matter what the subject is, as long as students are applying their talents and their, what would you say, their passion to the project. I mean, it's going to help, right?
Yeah. And do hard things. I'm like, solve hard problems.
And I would say, well, now that we're talking about this way, I just randomly thought of this. That's kind of how businesses want to operate as a whole, right? So like you said, when you were working for those businesses, you'd have these grand ideas, right? You always have grand ideas. This guy's great at this stuff. But and your company, people above you would be like, we should go into that, and then now the company wants to lead in that type of field, right? And that's how we would want to develop ourselves as personal like learners and developers. Right?
I like that. Yeah. I think that's totally.
Well, that's awesome.
Anyways, real quick before we go, actually, I don't know if this is a good question, but are any of your projects on GitHub? I want to know if I can follow them or keep up to date with them.
Yeah, one of them. So,
See if I can pull it up on my phone.
to be honest, you're gonna have to help me pronouncing it. It's Njord. I think it's Nord, right?
Njord?
It's the Norway Oh, the ORM project.
Okay.
NJORD-RS, so Nord-Rust.
Okay. I'm gonna see if I can find it. Is it a GitHub repository?
Yep.
Oh, okay. That's okay. Cool.
We'll
cool.
post a link in the description.
So there's that one.
That's awesome.
Another one I just open sourced a couple weeks ago. So we use Canvas as a learning management system.
Oh, okay.
I get really annoyed of how many clicks it takes to do a single thing. If you want to find course content, it's like 200 clicks.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to open source a new LLM, integrating AI like crazy into it. Call that study drift. So github.com/studydrift.
Okay.
Okay.
So that's another one.
We'll
Okay.
add that to the
Dude,
description
that's
as
cool.
well.
That's cool. Yeah. These are awesome.
Yeah.
And cool. Yeah.
Well, are there any closing thoughts you'd like to share with our viewers before we go?
Honestly, I think during the time where the economy gets a little bit tougher, in my opinion, I think you just need to get a little bit more creative on finding your first job. There's a lot of CEOs of startups who love talking about themselves, and showing interest in their company and let them talk about themselves kind of builds a connection between you and them. And then you might be able to ask for a job from there. So I'd say just be creative.
It's kind of like the golf course type networking
Exactly.
approach. I like it. Well,
Cool.
Brother Willden, thanks for being our guest. This is CSE Tech Talks, and that's a wrap.